Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to We Need to Talk with Tony Lindsay. I am your host, Tony Lindsay. Thank you once again for joining me. I am here today to talk about NYC politics. We're talking about New York City politics. You know, election season is here. We have a whole bunch of races. We have the city council races going on. We have the public advocate. We also have the mayoral race. And this is a very interesting time in New York City because the leading candidates, they're not really running on policies that protect or help the middle class anymore. And I think that shows how our politics have changed largely on the political left. Now, living in New York City, places like California, which is pretty much on fire right now, you tend to find the highest levels of income inequality, poverty, homelessness, but then you also find vast degrees of wealth simultaneously in the same areas. And I think it's worth it that we dig into that just a little bit because things are getting crazy, folks. Things are getting really crazy. And I think it starts with us. First of all, we got to stop pretending that places like New York City, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, that those are cities of opportunity. Because especially here in New York City, it's becoming a city of ownership for the rich and rental contracts for everybody else. We're creating a permanent rental society. And I think this is something that we really need to talk about it because I think as Martin Luther King said, I fear I've led my people into a burning house. And unfortunately, while I've been a Democrat my entire life, I no longer am, though. But for a person who has been a Democrat my whole life, when you start to just look at things from a common sense perspective to see how the policies are serving you, you just have to look at things with a critical eye. And when you do that, you'll start to understand how the things that you've been advocating for just aren't serving you and they're not serving your community. So, I want to talk about that just a little bit. There are a few things now you guys know that I've been advocating very fiercely for homeowners, small homeowners, people who try to create and preserve generational wealth for themselves in this city. And it just seems like we've all been under attack. The working class New Yorkers, it seems like the price of living here in New York City is just continuing to skyrocket. And this is really dangerous what we're doing. It's really dangerous. And the reason why it's so dangerous is because we continue to fall for politics that continues to present to us through this lens of justice and equality and equity, all of these trigger words that they use to espouse their politics. But then when you actually dig deep into the details, you find out that it's actually harming you the most. Now, as a person who has been advocating and trying to educate people on the tenets of home ownership, buying a home, maintaining your home, advocating for just generational wealth to be able to pass down to your children. Remember the American dream? See, I've always believed in that. And I work very hard for all of the things that, I've accomplished and I've attained over the years. And that's something that I want to impart upon my children. But unfortunately, New York City is just uninvestable at this point, and it's becoming a place where clearly certain people are welcome and others are not. And I want to start this conversation by talking about Local Law 18, which has pretty much just kind of seemingly disappeared from the conversation. And people don't understand how small, little, seemingly insignificant laws like that, how they can usher in authoritarianism, how they can chase people out of their homes. And you know what? Before Local Law 18, there was the rent I'm sorry, not rent, but the eviction moratoriums that we were all that we had imposed on us during the so-called pandemic. Now, if you guys remember, there were a lot of mom and pop homeowners, people who lived in their little one families or two family homes, where they took the risk of taking a tenant. And we already know that in New York City, if you decide to be a landlord, you're a brave person, because that's almost an impossible task. It's almost impossible to walk away from a situation like that without losing money. And that's due to the policies. But we saw during that the eviction moratorium, every renter, every person who rents in New York City was basically told that they cannot be evicted. And this lasted for more than 2 years, where if you can't be evicted, then that means there's no consequence for you not paying your rent. Now, I just want to walk through the policies just so people can understand how nonsensical it is when you live in places like New York City. So already, this law, it basically granted permission for people to stay in someone else's property without paying their bills. Did it say that you can't pay your bill? You're not supposed to pay your bills? Of course not. But if there's no consequence for you not paying your bills, where is the incentive for you to pay your rent and take care of your responsibilities? So they ultimately made all of the tenants the dependents of their landlords. Now, maybe there are some, larger homeowners, like landlords that own like 10 families, 20 family units, 100 family units, that could maybe weather the storm for some of the tenants who didn't pay rent, or maybe even if half, I don't know. But when you're talking about a person, a small homeowner who has a one family or a two family or even a three family home, where you have a very limited amount of space, and that rent that you are counting on pays your mortgage, that makes the difference between you surviving and just losing everything. And so what we saw was a lot of people, they either lost their homes or they went into foreclosure over the 3-year period where people weren't paying rent. Now, on top of the fact that we had these moratoriums, everyone knows that in New York City, the average time to get a tenant out of your house, if you do file eviction, it's probably going to be about 1.5 years or more. So it was the moratoriums, and after it expired, which was about 2.5 years later, that's when the clock starts on being able to file an eviction notice. Now, most people, when they file that eviction notice, there's a lot of red tape behind it. They find a lot of excuses to make you start all over, go back to the drawing board. And I know in a lot of states, you can do like a 10-day eviction, 30-day eviction. In New York, it's 60 or 90 days now. So you have to give a 60 to 90-day eviction notice, depending on how long the tenant has been in the property. And if you get one word wrong on your filing, they send you back to the drawing board and you have to start the process all over again. Now, that's something that regularly happens. You have to have like an attorney to do this. And and I would say maybe about half the attorneys, they even make mistakes, or the court is so rigid with this. It's a clear bias. So anyway, you got 2.5 years of free rent. You got about another 1.5 to 2 years of litigation and free rent. But then on top of that, the court schedule is backed up. So because of COVID, we saw the court schedules back up to 2 years. So you have people who have been going through the long stretch. They're 5 years in right now with no rent. I'm one of those people. There are many people that have been going through this, and it's heartbreaking. And to see that there are no safety nets for people who work hard, bought their homes, are trying to survive in this city, pay their taxes, pay their insurance, people who are the backbone of New York City, to see that, we just get thrown under the bus like this. There are so many elderly people who were also put in that situation. There was a story of an elderly couple that were living in their car because the tenant refused to leave. They couldn't pay the bills. They went into foreclosure. They lost their own home while having to maintain a home for someone who was squatting in another property. So that's just one reflection of the things that were going on here. Then you had Local Law 18. Local Law 18 was a policy for now during these eviction moratoriums. A lot of folks who lived, who were primary residents in their private dwellings, what they were doing because they weren't getting rental income, and just people who just needed to supplement their income, they were doing short-term rentals like Airbnb, VRBO, booking.com, or just doing it on their own. They were renting, doing short-term rentals to tourists. They were home sharing. Now here comes Local Law 18, which was passed in the dead of night without telling anybody a word. This law, it restricts people. It places onerous restrictions upon New Yorkers, even within their own homes, dictating to them who they can allow to come into their home and share their home with. So let's say you have a 4-bedroom apartment in your home. You're only allowed a maximum of 2 people to come and stay in your house. That's ridiculous. On top of having to get a license to do it, then they hit you with all of these like weird restrictions that are reserved for larger units and hotels. So it's like they criminalize every way that you can possibly think of to make money and to supplement your income and survive in the city. Now, this law was passed not because they saw some issue or a public nuisance. It was passed because the hotel lobby, they paid off a lot of our elected officials. That's the easiest way to say it. They funded their campaigns. They made a whole bunch of donations. And next thing you know, they passed this law that fines New Yorkers. It hits you with violations for everything. And if you live in New York and you own a property, you already know how the Department of Buildings and HPD, they usually go around just trying to get into people's homes to just hit you with a violation for whatever. And in a city where the building codes and the administrative codes are updated like weekly, there's no way that they can go in your house and not find a violation. Everything in this city has been set up to hit you with some form of a tax in order to just be here and survive. Meanwhile, people are not making money. Their wages are not going up. The cost of living is sky high through the roof. And they continue to tax the most vulnerable amongst us. There's a reason why home ownership is almost gone in New York City. There's a reason why New York City is the gentrification capital of the nation. You have all of these wealthy billionaires and multimillionaires moving into the city. We have the heaviest influx. I don't even know if people know, but New York City has the highest concentration of millionaires, more than any other city in the country. Did anybody know that? I think it's in the world. Right now, we have it's like 4.5 million millionaires who live here. We have the most billionaires that live here as well. This is what New York City has turned into. And in places like the outer boroughs, like in Brooklyn, you see the prices are skyrocketing. I mean, rents now, the average rent in New York City is over $4,000 a month. That's the average. That's the in the middle. That's like the average of all, whether it's from 8,000 down to 2,000. But the average rent is about $4,000 and change for a 2-bedroom. How is this okay? And the craziest thing is, people are continuing to vote for this. When you look at the political environment, you see people who are, it's strange, to be honest, because I think, and here comes the criticism of the Democrat Party and liberals, particularly white liberals, because those are the people who I see who are flooding into our neighborhoods, especially Black and brown communities. They're coming in, they're moving into our neighborhoods. They're calling the police on us for just existing, treating the people of the neighborhood like they are unwelcome guests. They buy up these properties, they convert them. A lot of them, they're converting them into these like millionaire mansions, driving up. Well, they not only that, And this is the problem. They take over the politics, right? I have to blame, lifelong New Yorkers for this as well. I understand it's hard, but you can't just check out emotionally from the politics in your city, because when you get, discouraged and disillusioned, and you just feel, like, oh, I just can't handle this anymore. I'm not interested. You know what happens when you don't get involved with your politics? Other people do. And those other people, they dictate what's going to happen in your community. And that often leads to decisions that chase you out or price you out of your community. We have a gauge we have a gauge for affordable housing. I want to just talk to y'all about some of the scams that they use when they try to present to you this justice and equality in their politics. One of the things that Democrats love to espouse is, this uh, um, housing affordability, right? We want affordable housing. We want to make sure that we can take care of the poorest people. You're not going to change. They're pretending that they're against gentrification. Meanwhile, all of your city council members, your mayor, your assembly member, all of these people, they're working with these developers. They're giving them all these incentives in exchange for their donations that are allowing them to come in and rebuild your neighborhoods, buy your houses for pennies on the dollar, knock that shit down, and then they come with a promise of, well, yeah, we're going to make sure that we do 20% of it, or X percent of it is going to be affordable housing. Sounds good, right? Wrong. Because simultaneously, you are having people who are moving into your neighborhood, the gentrifiers, the white liberals. They're moving into your communities. You have a lot of wealthy people who are moving in. And what does that do to the AMI, the average median income in the neighborhood? So if everybody in the neighborhood makes, let's say, 25,000 to 30,000 a year, it's a poor neighborhood. It makes 30, everybody makes around, let's say, 30,000 a year. But then you get an influx of a minority of people who are, let's say they make, I don't know, 500,000 a year or 300,000 a year, a couple of millionaires. What does that do to the AMI? What does that do when you average those numbers? It now will change the AMI from approximately 30,000. It might hit 70, 80,000. So now affordable housing that is being reserved for the historical community members is being set at, let's say, 80,000 or 50, 60, whatever thousand. But it always ends up being calculated to much higher than the actual income of the people who live there. So you get priced out of your community. They come in, they take over, and they send your black ass packing down south. They try to send you to like somewhere in the Bronx or somewhere. Now they're doing it in the Bronx. So once they gentrify all of these areas, there's nowhere left for you. What else do they do? Well, I'll tell you. The Jewish community here in New York City, they tend to own a disproportionate amount of the real estate here. And they make a disproportionate amount of contributions to political campaigns. And that is why you saw at the mayoral debate recently, where even though they're all running for mayor of New York City, they all are asked questions where they have to pledge allegiance to a foreign country. How disgusting is that? They were all just falling all. Hold on one second. When I put the code in, it says operation failed. I'm sorry, y'all. Give me 1 second. I gotta pause this. Hold on. Sorry about that. I'm back. I had an Airbnb guest that was checking in just now as I was talking. All right. Where were we? I was talking about gentrification. Yeah. So yes, that's what they do in our community. So anyway, but besides just talking about the politics of all of this, let me I want to inform you guys about what I decided to do, because I think when we're dealing with situations like this, it's better to be proactive instead of just complaining. And one of the things that we tend to do is we complain, like, we'll express our outrage at things, but we don't really get active in finding the solutions and going after the solutions. So as a person who has always been an advocate in my community, I decided to start a nonprofit agency, a nonprofit organization, to forward the agenda that I've always done in trying to introduce people to entrepreneurship, real estate investment, the tenets of home ownership, by doing like workshops, webinars, just educating people, advocating for them. And the impetus for that was Local Law 18, which had such an adverse impact on so many people across the city. Now, the problem with this, well, first of all, if you look, you'll see that the people who have been the biggest opposition to our ability to share our homes has obviously been the hotel industry. Now, why is that? Because when it comes to the hotel industry, they see Airbnb as competition. But here's the thing. If I am sharing my own home, that's none of your damn business, because we have been able to share our own homes before anything that had to do with Airbnb, before Airbnb was ever created. But because Airbnb has this global war with the hotel industry, what they decided to do was go to the flagship city, New York City, and draft. Yeah, they actually had a hand in drafting the legislation. What they did was they funded campaigns, they donated to campaigns, and they worked with certain agencies in the city to go after quote unquote Airbnb. But when they decided to do that, they also went after the little guy who really had nothing to do with this huge corporate war between corporations, the Airbnb Corporation and the Hotel Trades Council here in New York City. So while the Hotel Trades Council and their lobbyists drafted this legislation that basically was putting small private primary residence homeowners in the red, where they can basically lose their properties, interestingly enough, that same legislation ended up exempting a lot of the big Class B buildings that the wealthiest New Yorkers owned. It exempted these luxury condos that they're renting right now on Airbnb for thousands of dollars a night. But for the little guy who has a spare 2 bedrooms in his apartment or her apartment, who is charging maybe $89 a night, they're going to be slapped with like $10,000 fines. So so it's like, how does any of that serve the middle class? How does that serve hardworking New Yorkers? It's just getting to a point where I'm really tired of seeing our politicians wearing social justice like a costume. But every time when it's time for them to like really prove themselves, their votes say otherwise. This is unfortunately the state of our politics. And the worst thing for me is that I would say that we have probably the most racially and culturally diverse local government in New York City's history. And it is also the worst and the most incompetent and the most corrupt. What does that say? Where is that going to lead for the rest of us? It's sad, because they clearly use faces. They use these symbolic faces to preach justice to you while they're taking away all of your freedom. And this political environment here in New York, it's so toxic, it's so horrible that people are afraid to speak up. I know so many liberals, so many Democrats who agree with every single thing that I just said, but they will never say it out loud. They will never say it amongst their peers. They won't say it in school meetings or city council meetings. They won't ever say a word amongst their friends, their colleagues. Why? Because the political environment that exists on today's left, it is so hostile and vitriolic and venomous that if you dare to question anything within that orthodoxy, you're immediately vilified, you're attacked, you're to be punished, canceled, lose your job. They want to destroy you. It's bullying. And the crazy thing for me is to see how these policies are actually hurting so many people, but they're afraid to say anything about it. And so we talked about local law 18. Now, I'm solution oriented. So after creating the organization, we drafted legislation, a legislative solution. So my organization, working with a good friend of mine, an attorney, JP Juan Paulo Dizon, we went through the entire building and administrative code of New York City. We went through the housing maintenance code, and we put together a draft of a legislative solution that not only doesn't impact local law 18, but it creates a very reasonable common sense carve out for the private dwelling owners who are already exempt under state law. So you would think that'd be a simple solution, right? Oh, woo, they came up with the solution. You know, a lot of these city council members, they're pretty lazy, so they'd rather have everything just laid out for them. All you got to do is take it and put the bill out. That's it. Just put it out as a bill. Most of the city council has just been ignoring us, their constituents. Every time they try to bring up the conversation, they blow it off. How can you elect people to represent you as constituents and be okay with these people ignoring you when you bring them your concerns? This is the state of our politics in New York City. Now, one thing that is probably pretty clear is that these people are afraid to tackle what they would deem a controversial issue during their campaigns, their election campaigns. I would argue that is exactly the time when they need to address these issues, because, and the thing that's crazy is these aren't even controversial issues. How is it a controversial issue that you want to save small private homeowners from losing their homes? Many of them Black and Hispanic and elderly. How is that controversial? Oh, it's controversial because it goes against the Hotel Trades Council, the unions that are funding your campaigns. That's why it's controversial, because they're bought and paid for by the hotel unions, which are bullying them to death. So if you're not even brave enough, or you don't have the integrity to stand up for it now, and you're going to hit us with a Joe Biden line that, like what he gave Ice Cube, talking about, we'll talk to you after the election. How can we trust you? We cannot. We have to get to a place when we're willing to hold these people accountable. We have to vote them out. If these people do not serve your interests, if they do not listen to you, why are you electing them? Why are you voting for them? They have to earn your vote. If you go to work and you don't perform at work, you lose your job. We have to hold them accountable. There must be consequences for inaction. I don't want to hear that you're intimidated by this lobby, the hotel lobby. Oh, they're going. Who gives a shit? If you're right, you're right, and they are wrong. Period. When are we going to get elected officials that are going to stand on the right side of history and stand with their constituents? AKA do their freaking jobs. This is why I hate money in politics. Because if you think your interests are being served, nah, bro. I got a bridge to sell you, because your interests are not being served whatsoever. They sold us out. There are a few city council members who have had the courage to stand on the right side, so I'm definitely going to give them that. You know, Chris Banks, who is, you know, my city council member in my district, District 42 in Brooklyn. You know, he's a co-sponsor to our legislation, because we actually have a bill right now in the city council, Intro 948. It's bare bones right now because we got that bill from Jumaane Williams, and we want it's to be built out. But it's a very simple solution as proposed right now. That should have been the easiest thing to get the whole damn city council to sign on to. I've been sending out emails. I've been making phone calls. I've been going to offices, and I'm still not getting any damn responses. And this is why one person can't do this. 3 people can't do this. We all have to collectively put the pressure on these people. And we also have to change the narrative, because one of the things that I see these corporations have on their side is the media. And there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. I hate those terms because they're communist terms, but there are a lot of lies that are being fed to the public through corporate media. And as a person who understands the intricacy and the details of legislation and all of these different initiatives, I can tell you, these people are deliberately lying to you. They're intentionally doing this. These so-called journalists, they're just creating whatever narrative they want in order to push the agenda that they have been paid to push. That's it. I'm telling you. And unfortunately, the people with the loudest microphones are the people who are lying the most. They're the ones who have the platforms. And that's why you have people like me and others who just go out here on independent media. We do our podcast. I write op-eds. We do whatever we can to get the word out to people in order to change the narrative, because this is how they always win. It's narrative control. When whoever can control the narrative, they control everything. When you have a corrupt media that lies to you, they ultimately control everyone. They control everything and every decision. Because if they're denying you access to the truth, they're denying you access to actual information, how can you be informed enough to make an informed decision? You cannot. So they've been running the sponsored ads with all of the lies and the disinformation, all of the obfuscation, the trivialization, painting intro. Well, there were 2 bills, Intro 1107 and Intro 948. Both of them were inspired from our legislative draft. But when it comes to platforming myself, any of the members, anyone who's actually educated on this issue, they never call back. They don't want to do interviews with people like me. Definitely not me, because I will easily correct all of the lies that have been spread. And the fact that they don't want to talk to me, it makes it quite clear that they are attached to and dependent upon the lie. We have to get away from this propagandized media dynamic that we're currently living in right now, because if we don't change things now, we're going to be forever trapped in an echo chamber of lies. Oh, and so I created, as a matter of fact, let me put this on here. Hold on. Because I'm streaming on TikTok right now. I know this is not an issue that a lot of people are used to me talking about, but like I said, you know, I got to talk about my local politics as well, because it's very important. So I put it on my screen. That's the name of the organization, is New York Homeowners Alliance. That is the name of the nonprofit organization that I created, where we fight for homeowner rights for New Yorkers. And as a matter of fact, let me take it off. I'll just put it. I'll put it on the podcast for now. I don't like the way it looks here on the screen. Let me take it off. What the hell? Hold on. How do I take this off? There we go. Yeah. So you can look right there at the bottom of the screen. Like there's the name of the organization is New York Homeowners Alliance. It's at you can find it at nyhomealliance.org. You can make a tax deductible donation either there to that Zelle, or you can find it on the website. There's also a Give Send Go campaign that we have, because it takes a lot in administrative and research and legal costs to keep this organization going. And while we do have membership from various people, a lot of the people who are directly involved in this initiative, they are the ones who are suffering and in danger of losing their homes. So anything that anybody can donate to that, I appreciate it. Oh, for anybody on TikTok, the Give Send Go is in my profile. If you want to go there, you can see it in there. There's a Give Send Go right there for the nonprofit organization. But yeah, so where am I? Okay, so I talked about Local Law 18. I talked about the scam of the politics. So why are we facing a housing crisis in New York City? Now, a lot of people are being told a whole bunch of different reasons, but the real reason, I mean, there are several reasons, right? But one of the main contributing reason is, well, it's multifaceted. One of them is the landlord-tenant laws. They call them tenant-friendly laws, but it's not just tenant-friendly laws. They're landlord-hostile laws that disincentivize anyone from investing in New York City. If you're a real estate investor, you notice they've been fleeing the city because the rental laws are so hostile. Even though the rents are getting pretty high now, if you own a building that is like let's say 3-4 family or more, you're going to be subject to rent stabilization laws. And it's like every minute there's some new restriction that prevents landlords from going up on the rent. It prevents them, like even after a tenant moves out, they can't fix, like when they renovate the whole place, they can't change the rent. So what is the incentive for them to, let's say, put 100 grand into rebuilding the whole entire apartment, and then they have to charge $1,100 a month, or they go from 1,100 to 1,140 a month? That doesn't make any sense. It's like they're punishing people for having wealth, and it doesn't make sense, because the only thing you're going to do, which we see now, is that a lot of these people who own these apartments, they're like 60,000 rent stabilized apartments that are being intentionally, purposely withheld from the market. So what happens when you take all of these previously available apartments off the market? What happens when they're not renting them? Many of them, they're not renting them because they can't rent them. They can't afford it. They can't even afford to fix it and then recoup the money in the rents because they can't go up in rent. So what are they going to do? They're going to keep those apartments, at least for the time being. And when they withhold those apartments, what does that do? It decreases the housing stock. It decreases the supply of rental properties that are in the market. And when you have a short supply, what happens to the demand? It increases. So when you pull 50, 60, 70,000 apartments off of the market, you have now just drastically increased the demand for a place to live for renters. And when you drastically increase that demand, what do you think is going to happen with the price of rent? It's going to go up. It's going to skyrocket. Everything that they're doing, every law that they pass right now is raising rents in the city. They have a new law that's scheduled to go into effect. Is it today? I think it's today. It's either the 9th or the 19th, but there's a new law that's going into effect with real estate brokers, where the broker cannot charge you as a renter. If you're looking for a place, they can't charge you a broker's fee. Guess who has to pay the broker's fee now? The landlord or the homeowner. So what do you think is going to happen if now, first of all, I think they changed the law where you can't charge, like, you remember how you used to do like 2 months security and 1 month's rent, or 2-3 months like a deposit. I don't think you can do that anymore in New York. I think you can only do like 1 month. So now the broker doesn't get paid unless let's say I want to rent a place, and I damn sure don't. But let's say I'm looking to rent an apartment. Now I have to pay the broker. So what do you think is going to happen when all of these people who are renting a place, they have to now absorb these broker fees, which usually amounts to like a full month's rent? So if they're renting an apartment for $3,000 a month, they got to pay a broker $3,000 just to get them a tenant. And how are you going to get your security? So you know what they do? You know what these people are doing now? If the owner has to now pay a broker's fee, what do you think is going to happen to the price of rent for them to recoup? They're going to raise the rent in order to supplement for the money that they have to pay to those brokers. And they will make that up over the cost of rent, the increase in rent over the years. So that also drives up the rent. So you got a decreased housing supply driving up rent. You have laws that are hostile to landlords driving up rent. And it's making it difficult for brokers out here. So, but somehow the people who are the problem are people who live in a 1 or 2 family as their primary residence, and they want to share their homes to supplement their income so they can survive and not drown in debt in this city that is with a steadily increasing cost of living. That's who they're going after, the little guy. That's who the mayor's office of special enforcement, they're banging on these people's doors like every other day, harassing them to get into their homes, interrogating their Airbnb guests, and then hitting these people with violations, even though they never even walked in the door. This is like some weirdo, crazy, like Gestapo tactics. But this is what New York City has become. Even the leading candidate, and I know a lot of y'all seem to like him because of the way he answered the question on Israel, but he's a socialist. Have you looked at his policies? Your taxes are going to go up. Things are going to get more expensive, and it's going to widen the wealth gap under the guise of equity and justice. Come on, come on. Like the leading candidate for mayor of New York is a socialist next to Cuomo? I just don't understand this. And that's why I have to get out of New York. I am doing everything I can to get out of New York. I tried. I mean, I'm still fighting the good fight because I got in this fight, and I'm not going to leave it until I see it through, win or lose. But we have to start calling this stuff out, man. We can't just complain anymore. We have to be proactive. So one of the solutions, at least a brief reprieve for the small 1 and 2 family private dwelling owners in New York City, is Intro 948. I am asking that if you are a New Yorker and you're watching this, if you live in the 5 boroughs, if you live in New York City, if you live outside of New York City, I need you guys to call. Well, for those who live in New York City, I need you to call your city council member. I need you to go to their office. I need you to hold them accountable. I need you to tell them or ask them, when are they going to sign on as a co-sponsor to Intro 948? Because I really wanted this up for a hearing this June, but it's not going to happen. So that means we're now going to be pushing it back to September. And the reason why we didn't make it to get to a hearing in June, real talk, is because of you guys. We're not paying attention to what's going on, and the people who are like screaming out into the abyss, hello, look what they're doing to us. You're not paying attention. And to the people who are impacted by this, listen, I feel your pain because I'm being impacted by this as well. But a lot of you guys are not following through. You're not confronting your city council members. You're not sharing this initiative. You're not donating to the campaign. You're not doing your part. So if you want to see real change, you're going to have to be proactive, plain and simple. I am willing to go with anyone to go and sit down and discuss this issue, this legislation, with their city council member. I will make myself available. I am willing to have anyone come on the podcast so we can talk about this issue, because this is something that people need to understand. And you know, I have a pretty decent following outside of New York City. And when I tell this story, they're like shocked, like, wait, are you for real? Is this really happening? And the one question they always ask is like, wait, why are they tolerating this in New York? And that's my question. Why are we tolerating this? Why are we not holding these people accountable? What are we afraid of? Stop being afraid. Stop blaming other people and not stepping up and doing your part. Because if you don't, those same gentrifiers that you're complaining about in your neighborhood, they're going to take over everything and they're going to kick your ass out. We're heading towards a permanent rental society where you will own nothing and you will be happy, according to Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. So hopefully, guys, you'll just take just a little bit of what I said and do your part. So once again, you see the Zelle down there. Donate if you can to the nonprofit organization. Go to the website. Wait, let me see if I have a link to the website that I can put up here. Damn, I don't have a website. All right, let me put it in right here. And oh, I know what, I can put it here. The website is, well, I'll tell you what the website is. It's www.nyhomealliance.org. That is, let's see if I did it right. Save. Let's see. Yep. Sorry about the space. Matter of fact, hold on. Yeah, that's a little sloppy. Let me create a bigger space between them just to make it easier. Save. Oh, it won't even do. Oh, I know what to do because it won't let me do the space. So I'll just do this. All right. So just look at the scrolling at the bottom. That's it. All right. So the website is www.nyhomealliance.org. And if you want to do a direct donation to the organization, tax deductible, that's the Zelle, info@nyhomealliance.org. All right. Everything goes directly to the costs that are associated with the lobbying of city council members, the legal costs, administrative costs, research and development, and everything, tech costs. So anyway, you guys, thank you very much for joining me. Very soon, I would say within the next month, I'm going to be officially launching the podcast. You guys know that I've been working very hard on getting my ducks in line to get out of New York City. So yeah, but in the meantime, you know, I'm setting things up. I'm still here for now, right? But I am in the process of selling and getting out of this city because it makes no more sense. But either way, thank you guys for supporting, those of you who have, and I'm going to continue to fight, even if it's just me, because at the end of the day, like if you're not willing to stand up for something, you're going to fall for anything. And I'm a fighter. I don't quit. And you don't quit. All right. Anyway, I'm going to go to my TikTok live and we're going to have discussions about some of the other things that are going on. But I just wanted to address some of these issues that we're facing in New York City politics. Remember, the real cause of the housing shortage, this housing stock shortage, has nothing to do with 1- and 2-family homeowners, because we are not a part of the city's housing stock. We are not. The housing stock of New York City is reserved for those who are regulated under the multiple dwelling laws of the state, and those are 3-family homes and above. If you are the owner of a 1 or 2-family home, you are considered under state law a private dwelling. You are not a part of the city's housing stock. They cannot force you to become a landlord, even though all of the laws that they are passing are with the intent of trying to bully you, coerce you into volunteering your home where you live as a part of the city's permanent rental supply. And you know what happens if you decide to take that risk. You can easily end up losing your home. This is a coordinated effort to snatch away any last bit of wealth from the middle class in New York City. Don't let them do it. Don't let them create this permanent rental society, because this is how they achieve ultimate control. Don't let them do it. Fight back and hold them all accountable. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.